through with JD Vance and Prime Minister later today. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's bring you all the headlines we are tracking for you this Monday morning. US Vice President JD Vance along with wife Usha Vance and children to visit India starting today. On the agenda, trade talks with Prime Minister Modi this evening, followed by a visit to Jaipur as well as Agra. And in that much-awaited meeting of JD Vance with Prime Minister Modi, focus on bilateral trade and tariffs expected. The leaders last met at the Paris AI Summit. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump says he is serious about tariffs. He also lists down non-tariff barriers on Truth Social. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal to visit London, Oslo and Brussels from April 28th. Trade talks to remain in focus with the European region. And after a week of solid gains on Dalal Street, wiping out investor losses since the April 2nd by US President Donald Trump, Indian markets to open today after a three-day weekend with no development on the tariff front, but pessimism from the IT sector as commentary flows in. An NSE official who visited Gensol's manufacturing plant in Pune discovers no manufacturing taking place in the Chakan plant. Meanwhile, Gensol lenders PFC and IREDA MULL sale of Gensol EVs to clear debt. And it's not just Gensol that is defaulting. State-run telecom player MTNL defaults on bank loans worth 8,300 crore rupees. And finally, Indian origin SACHIN KATTI gets promoted to Intel's new Chief Technology Officer and AI Chief after CEO reject of last month. Let's start with the top story we're tracking for you this morning. In just a few minutes, if not hours from now, US Vice President JD Vance will embark on his 4-day visit to India, starting today, as the two countries seek to unlock economic opportunities and negotiate a bilateral trade deal. Now, Vance will meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi for talks on the economy, trade as well as geopolitical ties. His visit is seen as an important diplomatic mission by President Donald Trump's administration, and it coincides with a rapidly intensifying trade war between Washington and Beijing, hoping that India could perhaps be a beneficiary of that fallout. A trade deal between India and the US could significantly enhance economic ties between the two countries and potentially also strengthen diplomatic ties. Now, the US is India's largest trading partner, with bilateral trade valued at $190 billion until last year. India's foreign ministry has said that the visit will provide an opportunity for both the sides to review the progress in bilateral relations, and the two leaders will exchange views on regional and global developments of mutual interest. Now, here's what we know so far about JD Vance's India visit. First on the agenda, of course, is the bilateral trade agreement, and Vance's arrival in India comes just weeks after Director of National Intelligence in the US, Tulsi Gabbard, was in India for a geopolitical conference, and 2 months after Modi met Donald Trump in Washington in the month of February. Now, Modi was, remember, among the first few leaders to visit the US and hold talks with Trump after he returned to the White House. Now, during his visit, Modi hailed a mega partnership with the US and kick-started a negotiation process to minimize the possible fallout of Trump's tariffs after it had already cut tariffs on a range of US goods. Now, regardless, Trump targeted India with a 26% levy on April 2nd as part of his now paused tariff program, which has provided temporary relief for Indian exporters at least. Now, during his visit, Modi sought to soften impending trade barriers by saying he was open to reducing more tariffs on US goods, repatriating undocumented Indian nationals and buying military gear from the US. The two countries also agreed to start talks towards clinching the bilateral trade agreement. Now, Prime Minister Modi on Friday also said he spoke with Elon Musk and said he and the SpaceX CEO discussed the immense potential for collaboration in areas of technology as well as innovation. Modi also said India remains committed to advancing partnerships with the US in these domains. Now, India's deep ties to US business. This is the second thing on agenda during JD Vance's visit to India. India, of course, remember, is a close partner of the US for bilateral trade, foreign direct investments, defense cooperation, and important strategic ally in combating the rising influence of China in the Indo-Pacific region. India is also part of the Quad, which is made up of the United States plus India, Japan, as well as Australia, and seen as a counterbalance to China's expansion in the region. Now, leading US companies such as Apple as well as Google have expanded operations in India in recent years. Just last month, remember, Musk's Starlink entered into agreements with two of India's top telecom providers, both Jio as well as Airtel, to provide satellite-based internet services in the country. Now, to further boost trade ties, the US and India have set an ambitious target of more than doubling their trade to $500 billion by 2030 under the expected trade deal agreement. Now, negotiations are underway, especially urgent for New Delhi as it could be hit hard by tariffs imposed by Donald Trump, particularly in sectors of agriculture, food, auto components, high-end machinery, medical equipment, as well as gems and jewelry. Now, this poses a significant challenge for the Modi government as it hopes to spruce up the country's economy and generate jobs with an export-led recovery. Now, remember, Modi and Trump already share a rapport. Modi established a good working relationship with Donald Trump during his first term. Now appears that the two leaders are likely to further boost cooperation between both India and the US. Now, this comes particularly in the wake of Chinese President Xi Jinping, who's aiming to position Beijing as a reliable trade partner in the Asia-Pacific region amid rising tensions with Washington. India has also already taken a number of steps to win over Donald Trump. It will purchase more oil, energy and defense equipment, including the fifth-generation stealth fighter jets from the US. The US, however, wants greater market access in India for its agriculture and dairy products. But New Delhi has been reluctant so far as the farm sector employs a bulk of the country's workforce as well as voter base. Now, remember, JD Vance's visit also serves not just as a bilateral and tariff negotiation, but also serves as a family trip. Remember, his wife Usha Vance is a practicing Hindu and she's a daughter of immigrants from South India. A trip to Jaipur as well as Agra are on the agenda. All right, and moving on to another story, and this comes by way of a report filed by Bluecraft on a quantitative assessment of India's direct beneficiary transfers, more popularly known as DBT. Now, some of the findings in that Bluecraft report are fairly astounding on the positive side. Let's look at some of the basic ingredients in that report. Of course, it's a long report and we suggest you must read it if you are interested in the economy of India. But some of the numbers in those reports are quite astounding. Number one, there are as many as 3.5 lakh crore rupees in cumulative savings in India since 2013. That is around the time that the direct beneficiary transfer scheme had begun. In addition to that, there is a subsidy allocation which has now been reduced from 16% earlier to just about 9% in FY24. This is a 16-fold increase in beneficiary coverage. Now add to that welfare beneficiary index. We'll try and understand what that means later, but the welfare beneficiary index has inched up from just 0.32 to 0.91. And in general, there has been an observation by Bluecraft that savings in India's food subsidy have been registered at breakneck pace. Well, joining us this morning to understand this report and these findings a little bit more in detail is Mr. Shakil Bhatt. He's a Jammu and Kashmir Administrative Services Officer and also Senior Fellow at Bluecraft. Mr. Bhatt, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us here on News9. Help us understand, we did try to sort of concise the 5 or 6 key findings in the paper that you've written, but help us understand what exactly does your report tell us about the nature of DBT beneficiaries in India?
Good morning, Karthik. Thank you for having me on your show. Basically, this direct benefit transfer mission, it was started back in 2013 on a pilot basis where 28 schemes were opened.
Right.
But time the efficiency increased so much, the transparency increases so much that at present we have around about 300 plus schemes under direct benefit transfer. Previously, what happened that these beneficiaries will get subsidy in terms of the cash, in terms of the check. But during that transition, there are a lot of siphoning of the funds. The whole subsidy amount didn't reach to the beneficiaries. So the government came up with the idea of DBT, where these beneficiaries are directly being transferred those subsidy amounts with the help of the technology. You must have heard the term of Gem Trinity, where there is Jandan, Aadhaar, and mobile.
Yeah.
In Jandan, the citizens are being provided with the facility of financial inclusion.
Right.
At national level, if we see, we have 100% of saturation in terms of the accounts, Jandan accounts. We have Aadhaar 92% of. In adult population, we have saturation of 92%. Mobile connectivity or internet connectivity, we have 85% of saturation.
Right.
So this Gem Trinity was a sort of backbone to this direct benefit transfer.
Right.
So where we directly transfer the subsidy amount into the beneficiary's account, it eliminated the middleman, it eliminated the corruption, it increased the transparency. It is a live example of the governance post 14.
Absolutely, Mr. Bhatt. So can we singularly attribute technology and the Gem Trinity to sort of be the direct reason why we've seen the kind of increase in DBT that you're talking about?
No, we cannot.
Right. I think we will try and get Mr. Shakil Bhatt back with us. But just to recap the findings of this Blue Craft report, and let's take it one by one. There are as many as 3.5 lakh crore cumulative savings which India has registered by way of DBT ever since 2013 when the pilot project was started. Now remember, subsidy allocation has reduced as a percentage of India's allocation. The subsidy allocation has reduced from about 16% to 9%, and there's been a 16-fold increase in beneficiary coverage. Mr. Bhatt, I'm told, is back with us. Mr. Bhatt, can we say that technology is the prime reason why we are seeing this increase in coverage as well as the benefits accruing to the beneficiaries?
Yeah, definitely. Technology is the backbone of this mission. But besides the technology, we should have the governance model, we should have the vision, we should have the political will to implement this. We cannot ignore that technology. Technology has played a significant role in making this mission so successful.
Is there anything in your report, Mr. Bhatt, that also points to how long will we have to continue with subsidizing and how long will we have to ensure that subsidies continue? While you're mentioning that there has been savings in India's food subsidy and that is as a percentage of India's budget, but how long do you anticipate the food subsidy program to continue?
Through our calculations, we came at a figure of 3.48 lakh crore, which has been saved from last 1 decade. Right? Are you getting me?
Yeah, 100%. Please go ahead.
Yeah, this, as you know, our country, India, is a welfare state. So, in near future, we have to continue with these welfare programs. I cannot say that we have in near future we are done with this welfare system. In my opinion, we have to carry this forward unless and until we don't become Viksit by 2047.
Right. Okay. So no more subsidies after 2047 seems to be the hope at least. But what is this welfare beneficiary index which I read about in your report? Can you just explain to our viewers what is the welfare beneficiary index and what does the reading going up from 0.32 to 0.91 indicate?
Yeah, exactly. As you know, the policy is as important as it is implementation. At times you must have a good policy at your hands, but its implementation is not so much efficient. So we want to verify that whether this DBT mission has really transformed this welfare system on the ground. We developed an in-house index that is known as the Welfare Efficiency Index. Actually, it has 3 variables. One is DBT saving, subsidy reduction, beneficiary coverage. When we put that data up 1 decade on this scale, we came at a conclusion that during its inception at 13-14, it was having an efficiency of 0.31. That is 31% efficiency. But by being with the time, it came out to be 92%. This this index is basically we have developed it through a comprehensive analysis.
Right. Where is, as per your index, where is it that India is lacking right now? If you're still working at 91% efficiency, while the rise is great from 32% to 91%, but then there is also a 9% loss. So what needs to be done to ensure that the efficiency rate actually goes, if not 200, then near about 100%?
Yeah, exactly. As there is a famous saying, there is always in scope for improvement. We have we have to do certain kinds of eliminations, right? There may be bogus beneficiaries. We cannot say we have done it in 100% of elimination, but there is little scope to improve on that. We have to implement the AI-driven technologies to remove those bogus beneficiaries or duplicacies, right? We have to develop some sort of grievance redressal mechanism. These are some points. We have a kind of digital divide with the rural India. That's not too much, but in near future, I think in 5-6 years we will do that.
All right, Mr. Bhatt. Right. Well, let's hope it is progressing well and on track, Mr. Bhatt. Thank you so much for taking time out and being here with us on News9 this morning. And with that, we will slip into a short break, but coming up on the other side, Mohit Gang will be with us to decode the mood on Dalal Street. Well, markets have just about opened. It seems to be a green start. We'll wait for a few minutes for the data to settle down before we bring you the mood on India's stock markets today. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
Beyond better, the new Tiguan R-Line. Volkswagen. I need expert living. I need my carrier.
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया.
Smash your way to glory at the NEWS9 Corporate Badminton Championship. Get ready for the ultimate badminton showdown. NEWS9 presents the biggest corporate championship, a battle of skill, speed and supremacy. Cash prize of 6 lakh rupees across categories. Venue, Pulela Gopichand Badminton Academy, Hyderabad. Dates, May 9th to May 11th. A chance to showcase your talent and make a mark. The court is set. Are you ready? Register now.
Welcome back. You are watching Morning Brief at 9. Let's get you the mood of the markets on Dalal Street this morning. It seems to be a positive start with Sensex and Nifty both registering healthy gains in early trade today. The Nifty 50 is up almost 0.6 of a percentage point and the Sensex is up about 0.7%. Sensex inching very close and fairly fast to that 80,000 levels. We are at 79,100, but we are getting close to at least that magic figure of 80,000. Hopefully in days and weeks to come, if not sooner. Meanwhile, the action on the mid-cap and small-cap space is also fairly positive. Today in trade, we are seeing the small-cap index up about 0.8%, now inching in the 16,500 territory. Meanwhile, volatility, also referred to as India VIX, so the fear index is a little higher today. We wonder why. It's higher by about 2% or so at about 16 levels this morning. Remember, markets could swing either way. We are living in volatile times, and one announcement, one statement from the White House or anywhere else in the world could swing the markets in any direction. This is also earnings season, result season. The commentary from the IT sector hasn't been that bullish, but despite that, the markets are inching up a little higher in trade today. Let's look at the Nifty 50 heat map and try and make sense of which are the sectors and which are the stocks which are performing well or not too well in trade today. Well, of course, the banking sector is doing really well. HDFC Bank is up about 2%. ICICI Bank is up about 1.3%. And despite the earnings season being a little lackluster for the IT pack is recovering from its earlier losses. In fact, Infosys, which has been among the most volatile stocks ever since the entire US R word, the recession word, has been in debate. The entire IT pack has been under some sort of a negative red run, but we are seeing some gains of green this morning. Infosys is up about 2.7%. We also have Tech Mahindra up about 2.5%. TCS pretty much flat this morning. Not great news coming from the automobile space. Maruti Suzuki is down about 0.75% in trade. Pretty much flat as far as movements are concerned on the energy space. Well, we have a very special guest joining us. He's a regular with us at News9. Mohit Gang, the co-founder and CEO of Moneyfront, is here with us to help us make sense of the markets this Monday morning. Good morning, Mohit. Thank you for being here with us on News9. What are you making of the mood check today? Because yesterday, in fact, not yesterday, we had a 3-day weekend, but prior to that, last week, we saw 2 sessions of healthy gains, and that momentum seems to be continuing this Monday morning as well.
Oh, absolutely, Karthik. Morning. And look, I think markets have taken a note of whatever has happened globally. I think the announcements on tariffs have pretty much kind of settled now that no further announcements or no further surprises are in for the offing. And it's just between US and China to come on the table and settle down things. Otherwise, I think the world or at large is settling to newer realities. From an India perspective, look, I think we've been telling that the macro on India is improving. You have the inflation print, which is coming at an all-time low. You have an RBI, which has changed its stance from neutral to accommodative,
Right.
which means a lot. And you would see further rate cuts coming in. You have the banking sector, which is flush with liquidity and where the results are pouring in and the margins are improving and everything is looking quite neat and clean out there, right? And you have even in a slowing world, Karthik, I think the bigger moot point is that India would still stand out with a growth which is somewhere around 6% or 6.5% of GDP, right? That's not a mean number by anything. And plus, if the China plus one story really plays out, because you will see incrementally the newer allocation from FIIs and FPIs, if they have to figure out any destination after 6 months, Karthik, what that estimation could be, right? It can't be China for sure, because I think the global money will be really scared to enter China with the kind of war it is in with the US. And US per se is in doldrums in terms of policy, right? So the stance is, if the FIIs have to find a new den for their money, then it would have to be India, right? So my sense is, in a 6 months to a year, when the world settles down to newer reality, I think India will emerge extremely positive from that outcome. And we have to just bide out our time in next 6 months, see where the trade balances settle in, and then perhaps for a new encouraging rally in the market.
Right. Let's talk a few sectors, Mohit, should we? Let's begin first with the IT sector, and the commentary which is coming after the disclosure of results for Q4 has been a little tepid. I don't think there seems to be as much of optimism, and at best perhaps just cautious optimism, given the R word in the US, and that could be recession. Now, we really don't know, with this delay of 90 days, is recession going to hit US this year? Is it going to hit US next year? Is US going to escape recession and just have a soft landing? And that is a word that we've been using consistently since COVID. But the IT sector is directly linked to the mood in the US, and the mood in the US is fairly volatile. What do you make of a long-term investor betting on India's IT story?
Look, Karthik, I think honestly IT is a tricky sector to call out right now. I would not enter the space right now, given the kind of headwinds it's facing. It's not just the US market entering into recession. I think globe at large, when things are looking uncertain for businesses, the first spending cut which comes out is always the IT cut, right? And that's where it's all emanating from. I think the world is not very certain which way it's heading, and perhaps IT will take a brunt of it. Second, the rate cut scenario in US is not looking extremely positive. It's a dilly-dally between the Fed and the US government right now. They are also in a tussle mode. So you don't know whether you will see incremental rate cuts coming in, which in itself is not great for an IT sector. Right. And third is the kind of job slashes and job cuts which we would perhaps see with the advent of AI all across, right? So I think overall, it's a wait and watch kind of a scenario for the IT sector. It's got beaten down heavily off late. So maybe perhaps, yes, you would see some dead cat bounce kind of stuff out there happening, but I don't think so. It's a sector to enter right now. I would stay away from it as of now.
All right, stay away from the banking sector. And of course, we don't know which way Jerome Powell's career could swing given the stark warnings that Donald Trump has been giving him. What happens in case Donald Trump was to go ahead and sack Jerome Powell, Mohit?
Look, I think honestly, markets won't like these kind of chairs getting sagged, honestly, but I think markets find its way. So my sense is the newer guy who comes in perhaps will come in with a mandate of reducing rates further, which to me looks like a market positive. Honestly, if rates get slashed, I think that's positive for equities, that's positive for global equities per se. And if that were to happen, I think markets would remain sanguine from that perspective. Though, as I said, it's never good that the government interferes in the working of a central bank. But yeah, I think that's par for the course in the world which we are living in.
All right, that definitely is par for the course. I want to talk to you about the consumer non-durable space, the FMCG stocks, and they seem to be a little under pressure this morning, Mohit. In fact, HUL is down about 0.6%, ITC is down about 1% in early trade. Even Tata Consumer is down almost 1%, Nestle is down 0.6%. What are you making of the consumption stocks, the FMCG stocks? Why are they're supposed to be our last layer of defense, if not the first layer of defense, and the defensive stocks are actually dwindling quite aggressively this morning?
Yeah, look, I think when your overall market is looking positive and looking good, and high beta stocks are doing good and the high beta sectors are doing good, that's when I think the defensive sectors perhaps take a pause. But from 1 year kind of a perspective, honestly, I think that would be my second or third bet in the market, given that 2 or 3 scenarios will play out this year, Karthik. I think number one scenario which will play out is that the largies with the finance minister has rolled out to the consumption sector per se by virtue of tax cuts. I think that will all play out in this financial year. So you would see perhaps higher spendings going out in the market from next quarter onwards, and that should augur well for the sector. Second is, I think, the monsoon. The forecast from IMD and other agencies is pretty positive. It's 105% of normal monsoon, so it looks pretty good as of now. And if that were again to play out, I think we are in for a good harvest for the consumption sector at large, right? In consumption, you can always though call out that there are few pockets which are very aggressively valued in terms of valuations, and there are few pockets which might still look attractive. So you'll have to do some bottom fishing out there. But overall, my sense is the pack looks good, given that the world at large is kind of a little scared of equities right now. I think as a sector, this should do good for this year.
All right. And what do you make of the headline number coming on Sensex? Well, I'm seeing on a right now, Sensex is nearing the 80,000 levels, Mohit. Are we confident that 80,000 is at least one peak that we could potentially scale today? And then what becomes the new resistance for Sensex from here?
Oh, absolutely. 80,000 on Sensex and 24,000 on Nifty is just there, Karthik. It's just there for taking. I think we have, in a whiff, we were at 2050, and in a whiff we are back to 24,000, and that's the cost of staying out of market, or that's the cost of actually taking a call on markets. If there are any long-term investors out there, I think it's a good lesson for them that never to take timing calls on market, because markets can prove you wrong in a jiffy, right? No one was betting on markets rebounding so fast, so quick to these levels, but that's where it is. And as I said, the Indian macro, Karthik, is looking extremely positive, and there will be no other destination for global money to land in next 6 months to a year but India.
Absolutely. Well, I think everybody seems to be bullish on India, and of course Indian bulls also seem to be bullish now on the Indian markets, with the Sensex nearing the 80,000 levels and the Nifty 50 nearing the 24,000 levels. Well, that is a level that we could see in trade today. But Mohit, coming back to the fundamental question, you're talking about India's macros being stable and India's fundamentals being strong, but then we also have stories like Gensol which erupt out of nowhere and sort of mar the mood of investors. So I mean, we've been hearing about the froth in small caps. We've been hearing about staying away from risky stocks. And in a market like this, do you think it makes sense to just stick with the Nifty 50, Sensex 30, passive investing? Can't go wrong with that?
Karthik, two parts to your question. One is the evolution of capital markets in any developing economy will always inevitably go through these cycles. You will keep figuring out bad fishes in the pond, and that's where the regulatory framework comes into play. I'm glad that these things are getting called out more often than not. And it's also a lesson for investors to learn as to how to evaluate companies, how to evaluate balance sheets, and how to actually focus more on promoters and the quality of management. Right. So I think these are all part of evolutionary setup in the market. The second part, yes, right now perhaps taking shelter in the large caps is the best possible thing. You look at the rally in the large caps, you look at the large banks, you look at the large names in the market, they're all inching up like anything, right? So if you really want to be safe, and want to take a healthy up move right now, I think large caps, blue chips is the best possible thing. And to play that, yes, I firmly believe that a passive call on buying the index itself is a great call to take.
All right, so buying the index is a great call. As of now, well, we don't know how things evolve from here, but I can't let you go without asking this very basic question, this innate question that every Indian is definitely obsessed with, if not the central banks and many other institutional investors, and that is the yellow metal gold. What is going on with gold? How hot will it get? And do you expect in perhaps a few days from now, if not a few hours from now, we could see gold hitting that 1 lakh rupees per 10 grams? And if so, what does the investor do? Buy more, hold on, sell? What do you do?
That's the toughest one, Karthik, you've asked me. Honestly, I'll be hurting the
I'm sorry, I hate to do that to you on a Monday morning, Mohit, but I think we definitely need your view on this.
One thing which it's extremely difficult to call out, I think right now, is the yellow metal. Though I think the rally has been overdone. Honestly, it's too steep a rally to be considered true, but that's happening in front of all of us, and it's more because the global scenario is extremely fragile right now. Right, the uncertainty which is looming all over. The moment you have a clear direction, Karthik, I think the moment you have a clear settlement of the trade and everything, that these tariffs and everything on the table, my sense is gold should take a pause. Look, I understand that the central banks are buying more. I understand that the Chinese are asking their insurance companies to buy more. I understand there are statements coming from Trump. I understand that this is the safest possible haven. I understand that the value of gold has been eternal, perennial, everything. I get all that. There are a lot many positive things which I can keep rattling off, but and if you were to ask me to give a negative right now, I perhaps don't have any, but I just accept that it's too good a rally to be true.
Could the negative be perhaps holding more gold at this point? Is that a negative? Is that something that investors should be wary of?
I think you should be cautious of entering gold at these levels. If I were to put out my clear view on this one, entering at these levels, my sense, and then expecting you to make similar kind of returns will be firing in the air. I don't think so anyone should be doing that. If you're sitting already on a stockpile of gold or digital or physical, yes, by all means feel richer and feel good about it, but I don't think so it's a level to enter any further now. I honestly think there has to be a pause to this rally pretty soon.
Right. And gold ETF as part of your investment asset allocation split, gold ETF a preferred option as opposed to buying jewelry where you pay making and a lot of other
100% goes without saying. It was SGB previously. Since the time SGBs have stopped, now I think the only second best option which is available to investors is the digital way of buying gold, which is through gold ETFs and gold fund of funds. I think that's a fantastic way because you can do your SIPs there. You can continue to buy. You can continue to buy in a hassle-free, paperless format. Plus, you get the which is out there on the screen, and it's very easy to liquidate at any point in time. So I think goes without saying that for people who wish to invest as part of asset allocation, buying gold ETFs or gold FOFs is the way to go for.
Right, well, we will leave it at that this morning, Mohit gang. Always a pleasure having you right here with us on Morning Brief at 9, but we will let you go for now. And moving on now to some other stories that we are tracking for you this Monday morning. Well, market regulator SEBI has said it has found no manufacturing activity at Gensol Engineering's electric vehicle plant in Pune, stating that just about 2 to 3 laborers were present when a National Stock Exchange official visited the site in the month of April earlier this year. Now, these revelations were part of market regulator SEBI's interim order issued on the 15th of April following a complaint that it received in June last year alleging manipulation of Gensol's share price and misappropriation of funds. Now, during a site visit to the Chakan Pune facility on April 9th, an NSE official found just 2 to 3 laborers present. The NSE official then called for details of the electricity bills of the unit, and it was observed that the maximum amount billed by the Mahavitran during the last 12 months was for the month of December at under 1,60,000 rupees. Now, the inference is that there has been absolutely no manufacturing activity at the plant site, which is on a leased property. And the visit followed an announcement by Gensol to the stock exchanges on Jan 28th that it had received pre-orders for 30,000 units of its newly launched electric vehicles showcased at the Bharat Mobility Global Expo 2025. However, upon reviewing the documents provided by the company, SEBI found that the orders were just MOUs, Memorandums of Understanding, entered with 9 entities for 29,000 cars. But these were not contracts and these were not orders, just MOUs. Now remember, Gensol had secured as much as 978 crore rupees in loan from IREDA and PFC between FY22 and FY24. Now, of that total loan amount, just 664 crore rupees were meant for purchasing as many as 6,400 electric vehicles. However, Gensol admitted to acquiring only 4,700 odd electric vehicles, spending just about 568 crore rupees. Now, this was confirmed by one of its suppliers called Go Auto. Given that Gensol was also required to provide 20% of equity contribution, the total outlay should have been at least 830 crore rupees, leaving an unaccounted for amount of about 262 crore rupees. Now, the SEBI probe found that funds which were meant for EV purchases were often routed back to Gensol or entities linked to its promoters, Anmol Singh Jaggi and Puneet Singh Jaggi, the Jaggi brothers, who were directors at Gensol. Now, some of the funds were used for personal expenses of the promoters, such as the purchase of luxury apartments, transfers to close relatives, and investments benefiting private entities owned by the promoters. In response to these governance lapses, if you want to call them, SEBI took several stringent measures, including prohibiting Gensol and its promoters, the Jaggi brothers, from accessing the security markets until further notice. Also, it barred the Jaggi brothers from holding any directorship or key management position in Gensol. Now, following the order, of course, the Jaggi brothers, with lack of any other choice, did step down as the company's directors. Now, in the latest, now coming in, lenders IREDA and PFC are now considering selling the EV cars held by Gensol to recover the loans that they had given to the company. Meanwhile, investors continue to bleed on their investments in Gensol as the stock has consistently hit the 5% lower circuit in trade since the news broke last week. All right, and we do have live visuals now coming in of US Vice President JD Vance. His plane has just landed at New Delhi. This seems to be the Palam airport. Now, remember, there is going to be a guard of honor welcome for the US Vice President, who is all scheduled to meet Prime Minister Modi later this evening at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg, the Prime Minister's official residence, before Prime Minister himself leaves out of the country from tomorrow. So this evening is that big meeting that JD Vance and Prime Minister Modi are going to hold, and among other things, bilateral trade of India and US, as tariffs which were imposed on India on 2nd of April by US President Donald Trump, as high as 26%, are likely to be on the discussion agenda. Now remember, JD Vance is on a 4-day visit to India starting today, and unlocking economic opportunities and negotiation of bilateral trade is in focus. Back a little bit in history, JD Vance had met Prime Minister Narendra Modi last at the Paris AI Summit, which happened last month. Prior to that, of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself had visited the US on February 13th and had held meetings with US President Donald Trump as well as his close allies, including billionaire Elon Musk. Now, this visit, the screen that you're seeing right now, the aircraft which has landed in New Delhi, now taxiing in closer to the tarmac where JD Vance will be received by Indian officials. Well, we do see some men in uniform preparing for JD Vance's aircraft to be parked securely before he alights from the aircraft and goes ahead and makes his way for his 4-day itinerary. Of course, key among this is going to be today's meeting with Prime Minister Modi, scheduled to start sometime in the evening. Well, it's not just JD Vance alone who is traveling in that aircraft. In fact, JD Vance's aircraft is coming from Italy, not from the US, where he has been on a 2-nation tour, beginning first with Italy, now concluding with India. And inside that aircraft, you also have JD Vance's Usha Vance as well as their children. Now, a lot on agenda today. Well, first, of course, is a visit to the Akshardham temple, and that would be followed by a visit to the Red Fort. And this afternoon, there is scheduled to be a meeting of JD Vance with the National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, as well as India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, as well as Mr. J.P. Nadda. So that seems to be on agenda today, before the evening commences with a meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US Vice President JD Vance, where they are scheduled to hold talks on bilateral trade as well as tariffs imposed on India by US President Donald Trump. Now, there is going to be a formal dinner that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is hosting in honor of US Vice President JD Vance and his family. Remember, his wife Usha Vance is also traveling with him. But that's just the schedule for today. Tomorrow, April 22nd, is when JD Vance is scheduled to travel to Jaipur and visit historical sites, including the Amer Fort. Well, it's not just Jaipur on his itinerary. There is also a visit to Agra, which is scheduled. Remember, JD Vance's wife, Usha Vance, a practicing Hindu, wants to reconnect and get her children reconnected with her family roots. Her parents were immigrants from India. Now, tomorrow afternoon, there is likely to be an address gathering at Rajasthan International Centre in Jaipur. The governor of Rajasthan is expected to receive JD Vance, and an address is likely to follow from there. So that is the schedule for tomorrow afternoon. Followed by that, on April 23rd is when there is going to be a visit to Agra, followed by returning to Jaipur. So just a day visit to Agra, perhaps a visit to the Taj Mahal, before returning back to Jaipur on the afternoon of April 23rd. And that is when JD Vance and his family are expected to be staying at the Rambagh Palace. Visuals on your screen right now, the aircraft has parked. There is going to be, I think, the locking of the wheels before the aircraft opens and the visit officially commences of JD Vance and his family to India. Remember, JD Vance is going to be in India only till April 24th, which is when he will depart for the US straight from Jaipur. Well, that's the US flag on the tail of the aircraft that has ferried JD Vance and his family, which has now landed in New Delhi. That's the number 2 family of the United States. The doors are opening right now as we see on the screen the aircraft. The engines are still on. You can hear the audio of the engines. The engines are yet to be shut off, but the aircraft is now at the parking bay from what it seems. Well, not too much movement right now. It could be a while before the engines are turned off and the ladder is placed for JD Vance and his family to get off the aircraft and commence with their India visit. There is some action on the tarmac. Well, yeah, that ladder is being wheeled in. It seems that the aircraft is now definitely at the parking bay, and the engines are still on, so we are not sure whether we will see the family dismount the aircraft right now. These are live visuals, remember, coming from the Palam airport. More about the economic, trade and geopolitics which are likely to be discussed at that dinner which will be hosted today by Prime Minister Modi. Well, any US official visit to India or an Indian government official visiting the US, agenda would be bilateral trade and would be negotiation on tariffs. Now, tariffs, remember, is Donald Trump's fourth favorite word, which he has publicly stated more than once. And his fourth favorite word has been in effect from April 2nd before a 90-day hiatus was announced last weekend. Now, we do have visuals of some personnel coming down from the rear side of the aircraft. This seems to be JD Vance's security team, which is getting down at the Palam Airport tarmac first. Visuals of file footage of JD Vance on your screens right now. He would soon be getting out from the aircraft. Now back to the bilateral trade and tariff question. Well, remember, India has US as its largest trading partner with bilateral trade as high as $190 billion. And that now needs to likely increase by 2030 to $500 billion. All right, there you have it. Officials from the US administration getting off from the aircraft, all suited up here on mission mode, perhaps to negotiate a better deal for the US, while India's agenda would be to try and get a better deal for its own exports to the US. We also saw visuals of an Indian Air Force contingent ready for the welcome, a state welcome, which will be accorded to US Vice President JD Vance. We also just saw a car pass by, which is likely to ferry JD Vance for his commitments, official as well as personal. Well, contingents of the Indian Air Force, Indian Navy and Indian Army smartly lined up, the flags fluttering of USA as well as India. Well, it's a hot day. Temperatures in Palam likely to be more than 30 degrees Celsius already. It's going to be a hot day. The red carpet is laid out. Well, this red carpet, in addition to being just a red carpet to receive JD Vance, is also likely to be a symbolic one where there is going to be a greater welcome for increased bilateral trade between India and the United States. Being rolled out. That's the path to the car which JD Vance and his family would take, but not before coming and perhaps walk alongside the contingent of the Indian Air Force, Indian Navy and Indian Army lined up. And there is going to be a state welcome accorded. We will, of course, stay with these live visuals as we bring you that very smartly dressed Indian Armed Forces contingent ready to receive a state guest, US Vice President JD Vance. The security team has already deboarded the aircraft. It looks like the final clearances before US Vice President and his family would be allowed to get out of the aircraft and walk alongside the Indian Armed Forces contingent before sitting in their car and heading off for the itinerary planned for the day. Well, there's going to be a state-accorded Guard of Honor, which would be accorded to US Vice President JD Vance as soon as he gets off from his aircraft. All right, that's the itinerary of JD Vance on your screens right now, as well as the live visuals which are coming. What you see on the screen in the smaller of the two windows is the Indian Air Force contingent with the flag of India fluttering in the sky. The itinerary of JD Vance and his family on your screens on the right-hand side. Well, he is on a 4-day visit to India along with his family. The 4-day visit begins today. Of course, I think all eyes and ears are now waiting for JD Vance to get off that aircraft. And of course, what we would really be eagerly awaiting is that meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi later today. 6 p.m. is the scheduled meeting where bilateral trade, a discussion on the economy, the geopolitics, the geoeconomics, trade as well as tariffs is likely to be on agenda. And just to recap, India had been slapped with a 26% tariff, much lighter than what India's neighbors and other large manufacturing players in the region, including China, Vietnam, as well as smaller countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh had been slapped with. But nevertheless, a 26% tariff was posted on Indian exports on 2nd of April. Of course, those tariffs have been paused for a period of 90 days until mid-July is when there is respite. But it's not just that one uniform 26% tariff. There were talks of additional tariffs by US President Donald Trump, and those tariffs were to include India's pharmaceutical sector, which highly depends on US as a destination market. Well, we haven't heard more on pharma tariffs except for reiterations by US President Donald Trump about those being imposed. And there you have it on your screen. JD Vance, Vice President of the United States of America, walking down hand in hand with his wife, Usha Vance, ready to be accorded the Guard of Honor by the Indian Armed Forces. Well, the Guard of Honor is accorded to all visiting heads as well as VIPs visiting India on official visits. JD Vance and Usha Vance there shaking hands. Well, we will get you those, we will stay with those visuals. JD Vance now walking on that red carpet which was laid out just a few moments ago. Well, that's the car parked for him. It is a US-made GM car. It's the General Motors logo which was there on the car. And JD Vance there now walking on that red carpet. The car which is going to ferry him for his India visit falling behind. Well, we also have now a foreign affairs expert, Pathikrit Payne, joining us this morning. Mr. Payne, thank you so much for being here with us. A historic visit, so to speak, of US Vice President JD Vance, now receiving the Guard of Honor being accorded by the Indian Armed Forces contingent to him at the Palam airport.
Well, definitely, it's basically a semi-official visit. He's coming for some personal family, some kind of a get-together for an occasion, and at the same time, it's been converted as a visit where some very crucial things will be definitely discussed. Remember, he is probably the second most powerful person in the United States right now, and so invariably when he has come, even if it's for a semi-official visit, he definitely is carrying some messages and instructions and something from the Trump administration, especially in the realm of 2-3 major areas where collaborations and movement in the forward direction are expected. First, invariably, is the trade deal, the 19th chapter trade deal that is being intensely negotiated by India and United States. The second is the prospect in the realm of nuclear power development in India, where India has, pledged that it would support, manufacturing of small modular reactors, around 50 to the least. And so many companies of the United States like Holtec are very interested to set up a joint venture with Indian companies like L&T. That's one part. The third, invariably, is there would be a certain amount of push for defense deals from the American side. Though India has a Atmanirbhar Bharat policy, and India will never get into that mode that we are going to take anything just because somebody is pushing for it. But yes, there are areas of collaboration. For example, what was termed as Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technology, that has a new name called TRUST now. And so there are major areas of collaboration expected in the realm of quantum computing, AI, or biotechnology, and in fact also in defense manufacturing in India. So while India is very keen to deepen its defense cooperation with the United States, but India would prefer manufacturing of those to be happening in India. So I think there are major areas of collaboration, convergence, which will be discussed. But yes, there are certain areas of divergence and status quo also. India has a very independent foreign policy, so its own relation with countries like Russia and China are also critical in a certain way, primarily because of the BRICS formation. So it's a very positive, step in the right direction. I'm sure this visit will have very fruitful outcomes. Back to you.
Fruitful outcomes is what is expected, and there we have an Indian Navy officer marching towards JD Vance as he is inspecting the Guard of Honor. JD Vance now, after inspecting, now receiving the Guard of Honor by the Indian Armed Forces. Remember, the Guard of Honor is accorded to all visiting heads of state as well as VIPs on official visits to India. JD Vance now walking on that red carpet, inspecting the Guard of Honor before he proceeds with his agenda for the day. Of course, we heard Mr. Pyne saying that bilateral trade is on agenda today. Well, of course, continues to be on agenda for India and the US, and that is something that all eyes and ears are waiting to get more details of after that meeting between US Vice President JD Vance and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi takes place starting 6 p.m. today. Well, on your screens, JD Vance being accompanied by an Indian naval officer slow marching as the live band plays a hymn as JD Vance inspects the Guard of Honor being accorded to him by the Indian Armed Forces. Well, Mr. Pyne, if you're still with us, we do remember that the last family visit, perhaps talked about family visit, that Usha Vance and JD Vance had embarked upon was to Greenland. And of course, he received a fairly frosty reception there. This one seems to be fairly different from the trip to Greenland, doesn't it? All right. Well, so there you have it. The inspection of the Guard of Honor done. JD Vance now walking towards his US-built car. I'm sure Mr. Donald Trump would be happy with that. And JD Vance is now in India. JD Vance has received the Guard of Honor and will now walk towards his vehicle and depart for his agenda for the rest of the day. And that, of course, includes, among other things, a meeting with Prime Minister Modi at 6 p.m. today, followed by a dinner which is being hosted by Prime Minister Modi in reception of JD Vance. That's the only official visit which would take place today. The official talks would take place this evening before JD Vance, his wife Usha Vance and the children proceed to Jaipur tomorrow. Remember, this is a 4-day visit. Official talks, bilateral trade, tariff-related talks expected to be held just today. And then tomorrow is when JD Vance departs for Jaipur, followed by just a midday session in Agra on April 23rd before returning to Jaipur and finally flying out on the 24th back to the US. Remember, JD Vance has visited India from Italy. He hasn't flown in from the United States. He is visiting India from Italy. And there you have it, his children now coming off the aircraft dressed in Indian attire. The India roots seem fairly well donned by the little children, 3 of them all dressed in Indian attire. You have a little girl now being carried by JD Vance himself, dressed in an Indian lehenga, and you have the little boys wearing a saffron colored kurta and another white colored kurta, well dressed for occasion, as they call it. There you have it, JD Vance's son in a orange kurta, the older child wearing a white kurta, and the daughter dressed in a lehenga. Fairly well suited for the occasion if tourism and reconnecting with family ties and family roots is what the second most powerful family in the US is here in India for. All right, and hand it over now to my colleague Neha Bhan, who is joining me in the studio. Neha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Karthik. Well, there you have it. United States Vice President JD Vance and his Indian origin American wife Usha arriving in India. They're on a 4-day visit to India starting today. Accompanied by their children very beautifully. They're explained by my colleague Karthik Malhotra. Visuals there right on your screens. Vance is accompanied by at least 5 senior US officials, including representatives from the Pentagon and the State Department. Let me quickly, in fact, introduce to my panel of guests here. I'm joined by Ambassador Suresh K. Goyal. He's a former Indian diplomat. I'm also joined by Pramit Pal Chaudhary, who's a foreign affairs analyst. Well, let me quickly go across to Ambassador Goyal. First of all, a very warm welcome to you, Ambassador Goyal. JD Vance's visit, comes at a time when US-India ties are facing pressure over tariffs and trade. How do you interpret the optics of this visit? Let me start off by asking you this.
Great optics, Neha, as we can see now right from the screen, the dance, the great welcome extended to the family. As far as I can see, really, Neha, this visit is primarily to familiarize the family with the roots, Indian roots of the mother Usha Vance, and there will be a huge focus going to the spots like going to the Janpad, going to the Emporium, going to Akshardham, etc., etc. But amongst all those things, I think the one meeting that Vice President Vance is going to have in the evening today with Prime Minister Modi is an important one, because I think that is when they would be focusing on the substance of the India-US relationship in terms of trade, tariff, and the trade agreement that we are looking at. Neha.
Right, and also, Ambassador, you're talking about the trade here. Of course, that is the top of the agenda. But then there are reports that India is also looking to overhaul its nuclear liability law. Do you think that could also come up for discussion during this visit?
I'm quite certain that there will be interactions, there will be some exchange of views on those things. But the nuclear liability law is not really just one-off change. It is going to take some time, because that law really has been mentioned time and again in terms of the American transfer of nuclear technology, the civil reactors to the modular reactors. Therefore, there would be discussions between, I think, experts before anything can be said. Otherwise, there could be an exchange of views, but I don't think it will take too much of time, really, so to say.
Right, Ambassador, and also, you were talking about his, his Akshardham visit, and the cultural diplomacy here seems to be the part of the itinerary as well. Temples, heritage walks, and family involvement. Now, the question here is, how effective is this kind of soft power in terms of, in creating long-term diplomatic goodwill?
Neha, I have been Director General of ICCR for more than 3 years. And I've always maintained one thing, that the cultural diplomacy is important because it lubricates communications, it promotes communications between the two countries, between two people, it promotes understanding, etc., etc. And therefore, it's very, very important. It builds up on the relationship. But the substance of the relationship, which will involve bilateral trade, which will involve bilateral strategic component, common concerns, those are very, very important. And unless